Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that what you wear has the power to change how you feel? Project Endure apparel is designed to remind you that easy won't make you stronger, and that growth is an uncomfortable choice that we all have the privilege to make every day. Look good, feel good, and perform good. Head to the link in the show notes to shop Project Endure apparel and keep on doing hard things. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 187. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in Washington State, we have a very, very, very special guest, Zach Hamilton. Zach, how are you?
What up, Joe? I'm good, man. I'm good. Glad to be here. Glad we were able to make this happen, and I'm excited.
I am very excited to have you. And this has been something you and I have talked about for a little while now. And it's cool to bring it to life and to have the conversation we're about to have. And, I'm going to let you introduce yourself here in a second. One of the first things I remember from our first phone call was we got off and you were so thoughtful. You sent me a book and you were like, man, you got to read this book. Do you remember what the book was?
It was God. What book was it? Was it a John Bevere book?
It was The Awe of God.
Yeah, John Bevere. Did you ever read it?
I did. Yeah,
I did.
It's
a good book, man. Yeah, John Bevere, Awe of God. Yeah.
And so, with that being said, I want you to introduce yourself to the people listening, however you'd like. I'll let you share.
Oh man. Well, my name is Zach Hamilton. I'm an old man at 43 years old. The gray hairs are starting to come in. I live in the beautiful tropical city of Seattle, Washington. We have summer about 4 months out of the year. We're in our summer season right now. And I don't know how this podcast is going to go, but it's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. And hopefully lives will be impacted and affected by my message and my story. So.
Yeah. I know for sure that lives will be impacted when you share your story, where you've come from, what you've been through, and I think putting yourself out there has been something you and I have talked about for a little while now. And I'm excited that this is one of the places that you get to do that. So I'm going to start off by sharing a phrase. And I want to hear your thoughts on this phrase.
Phrase? Of course you'll share a phrase.
Yes. I'm the master of quotes. I'm the king of phrases. And this one is, God allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. So I'll repeat that one more time. God allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. And we didn't rehearse this. I didn't share this with you ahead of time, but I want to hear where your head goes in real time on that. And we'll blend that into your story here in a little bit.
God allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. Where do I even start with that? God allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. How do I even answer this, Joe? Geez, I said no hard questions. I guess when my mind immediately goes to the Bible on how God will use the things of this world to transform us and to change us and to mold us, whether it's, in the Old Testament, especially the adversaries, the enemies, on how God would allow the enemy to come into, the people that he loves, their camps, through the battles. And the people still had to go fight those battles against the people that God despised, and I think when I think of that, we still have, and will always have, our battles to face. And so, where am I going with this? That's a hard question, Joe.
Well, you took it in the direction I was hoping you would take it, because I think that one of the main reasons I have this podcast in the first place is for people to talk about the battles, the enemies, the adversaries and adversities that have then shaped them and molded them into a better, more loving, more patient, more resilient version of themselves. And I don't think that we can have strength without struggle. I
Yeah.
don't think we can grow without resistance. And I want to dig into your story here because I know for a fact, and I think the people listening will understand soon, that you've had a lot of those things. You've had a lot of those areas of resistance, those struggles, those challenges, adversities. And so I'll ask you the first big question and I'll let you take it away. But
I do got another answer to your question.
yeah, go ahead.
You can't have light without darkness. They coexist with each other, just like you can't have wins without losses. You know, they're in unity, and they're in a way, some weird way of companionship. They're almost aligned in some sort of way for you to experience what both of them are. So how are we able to be a light in the darkness of this world unless there's darkness in itself, unless we are that light that penetrates that darkness? So that would be kind of more of the answer to your question.
Yeah. Well, I think it illuminates what you said, illuminates the beautiful nature of the human experience. And it's beautiful and it's twisted and it's sweet and it's hard all at the same time, because you're right. You can't have the good without the bad. You can't have the easy without the hard. You can't have the ups without the downs. It all intermingles and coexists in this beautiful, complex, mysterious way. And I think in your story, we'll see some of that unfold. But when you look back at your life, Zach, so far, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
You know what? Probably my battle with anxiety and depression, and the way trauma affected my life and the things that I experienced and what I went through as a child, as a teenager, and as a young adult. And in those moments, I don't have the perspective, obviously, that I do now. But I would say, yeah, that would be it. And, and now looking back and having the lens and looking at things differently than the way I did back then, that was all pivotal to my human evolution. And it made me into the man that I am today. I think it can do two things to you. It can either turn you into a victim of your life, where you point everybody else and blame everybody else for your problems, or it can turn you into the creator of your life. And I choose to be a creator today. And I used to be a victim. And so, yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
It did. And we'll get into some details because I think it's helpful for people to hear specifics. But I just want to preface whatever comes next with the fact that everyone listening to this has a choice. Everyone listening to this can choose to be a victim or choose to be a hero in their life story. And it comes down to an active choice that we make every single day. And so with that being said, I want to go back all the way to the beginning. I know you've been through a lot. You used the word trauma. When is the earliest time in your life that you could remember having a hard experience, something that was maybe overwhelming, that made you feel like a victim?
Well, to get really personal, probably I was molested at a young age, and I didn't know how to interpret that or understand that of what happened. And it was from a childhood friend at a very, very young age, and I didn't realize how much that had an effect on me, because this kid was a very popular kid in school. And I haven't thought about this story in a long time. I chose over time not to do it because I didn't know as a young boy what I was experiencing. And he went around the school making up rumors about me, like I was the one doing to him, but I'm the one who said no. And so all these people that he had influence over chose to believe him. And there was rumors about me for a long time at a young age. So that heavily had an imprint on my young boy life, and affected me tremendously. as a kid, and I didn't realize how much it affected me until I started doing a lot of personal development on myself as a man, as a person, in my mid 30s when I really started working on myself.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I don't even think I knew that part of your
Yeah.
story. And where my mind goes is there are people listening to this who might not have experienced what you experienced in that regard, but they have this feeling that something is off in their life. They might not be able to pinpoint it. There might be this general sense of this thing or this circumstance just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. I don't know how to process that. If someone's experiencing that sense of, I don't like this, but I don't know how to process it, how would you encourage them having been through what you've been through?
um, I know exactly how to answer that. It's obviously, you mentioned feeling, and the feeling is a part of the body. And growing up, I had all these feelings that I ignored and I didn't want to have anything to do with. It was the parts of me that I didn't accept or I didn't like, and in the last 5 years, this gets emotional. Um, Especially the last three, I've learned to connect with those sensations, and I believe the the truest form of self love is loving all the parts of you.
Mm.
And when you learn how to love all the parts of you, those feelings start to change. As you build safety um, with those sensations and those feelings, and realize that they're there for a reason. It was out of your control of what those are connected to, but what is in your control is how you respond to those feelings, and those feelings are so pivotal to the human development as a person and their growth, as so long as you learn how to connect to them. And over time, it's just like working out a muscle, and you connect with it. And we'll get more deeper into that and what I'm talking about. But it's building safety around those thoughts and feelings, because they're there for a reason, and there's purpose and there's power and there's wisdom underneath those feelings that create and make you who you are today. That's what it did for me personally.
There's this idea out there that any lesson that you refuse to learn will repeat itself until
Yeah.
you learn.
Yeah.
And, I think that there are a lot of people out there, and I've been one of them. It sounds like you've been one of them who have these feelings come up over and over and over again. And to protect yourself or to process the best way you might know how in that season of life, you just ignore them. You try to numb yourself to them, and people take different avenues to that. But what you're saying is that you have to learn to listen and lean into them and build a safe space to be able to understand what they're telling you. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Your triggers are your power, man. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. It's crazy everything I've learned in this last few years, especially this last year and a half, about how much power and wisdom are in those triggers and sensations. And it's almost our birthright to learn how to connect with those. Because if you don't, you know, it's almost like you're not living out the life that you were created to be, because they're there for a reason,
Mm.
you know?
What would you say to someone who has had some really hard things happen to them and is understanding what you're saying between their ears, right? They're hearing what you're saying, but their gut, their heart is just, oh, they don't want anything to do with their feelings. They're understanding what you're saying, but they just don't want to. How would you talk to them?
Um, and like I said at the beginning, the truest form of self-love is radically loving all the parts of you. And these parts of you that I ignored for years, whether I would hide under the covers when I was feeling a certain way, when I had this anxiety and depression, paralyzed me, going from doctor to doctor, wondering what's going on. And I had no idea about, the chemicals that are being released in my body, for years. And I would say to that person, what's really helped me is it's just like working out a muscle. Learn to connect with your body through meditation, um, through even putting in your hand on your chest, where that heavy area is on your chest when you're feeling a certain way about something, and you just close your eyes and spend the next few minutes and tell yourself it is safe for me to be with this. And it's almost like, it's just like working out a muscle. You might not get the results you have then right now in that moment, but over time, as you keep on doing it and sit with those thoughts and feelings, those sensations, the volume of them will start to turn lower and lower and lower, because now you're creating a neurological connection and building new neural pathways with the way you feel about yourself and the acceptance that you're showing yourself as a person.
That is so powerful. And just to try to tie this together a bit for people who might not be grasping it, I think like the physical world is a good place to understand some of these lessons, because they do cross over, they do apply. You use the example of it's like building a muscle. Well, when you go to the gym and you lift a weight that is maybe heavier than you're used to, it might hurt a bit extra. It might strain you a bit extra. You might leave feeling a bit more exhausted, but you expose yourself to that struggle, to that resistance, to that fight, whatever
Yes.
it is. You leave, you recover, you come back, you're a little bit better able to handle it the next time and the next time. And it does take a lot of intention, it takes discipline, it takes
Yes.
persistence, it takes patience. And I think in a world where people want quick fixes, that idea of sitting with feelings over and over and over again can be a bit daunting.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. The For me personally, and if for people that are hearing this, the entry point to, from my experience, to your truest form of self-healing is sitting and connecting through the discomfort. That is the entry point. When that discomfort starts to rise, that is the way to connect. That is the way to heal, and that is the way to grow. And there's an upgraded version waiting for you on the other side of these sensations and these feelings and these emotions, because they're a part of us. I never thought I'd be thinking and believing and have the perspective I have today and who I am and where I was 3 years ago. Man, I was a mess emotionally. I didn't know what was going on. And it's almost like I prayed for years, God, remove this, remove that. I don't want to feel this anxiety, especially in relationships, and you know what? He never removed it. What he did, he put material. He started to put books and podcasts for me to listen to about 2.5 years ago. And it was almost like he was saying, I'm not going to remove it for you. I'm going to empower you to connect with yourself as a man, because this is what I created you to be and what I created you to do. It is the hardest work I've ever had to do. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. I knew I'd cry when I start talking about this because it's so personal to me. For those of you out there, it's the most hardest, rewarding work you'll ever do. And there's never a finish line. It's an ongoing process and a journey. But the truest form of discovery, what you discover about yourself and what you start to turn into, is this beautiful human being that you never thought was even there. So yeah, I just look at life so differently now, and my observation, my perspective, and my through a different lens. So I don't know what question you asked. I just kind of went on a tangent. So.
It was beautiful, Zach. And you never have to apologize for getting emotional. I think that is what this is about. It's being open, it's being vulnerable, it's letting the emotions run through you so that it can impact other people. And I guarantee you there's someone listening to this right now that can't wait for this conversation to continue, because it's just hitting so home for them. And we're not even like anywhere near done with your story. And so we started with this incident with this other kid in school, and we went down a path here with embracing feelings, sitting with discomfort, learning about yourself, discovering yourself. But there are other hard things that you've had to deal with growing up. And so after that experience as a kid in school, what was the next hard thing that you had to handle through your life?
Drug addiction. Yeah, I started experiencing with recreational drugs at the age of probably right after middle school. With marijuana, and then cocaine into high school, and then even harder drugs, crystal meth, in my early 20s for about 5 to 6 years. And I was a mess, man. I was a mess, and I had no value system to live by. I had no I had no honor for myself as a person. I completely abandoned myself as a human being. So that was a very, very hard thing to go through. And I didn't think that would never end, but at the same time, I knew deep down inside, this wasn't why I was put here on earth, or what I was created to be. So that was really, really hard. And now I sit here to today, 16 years, 17 years clean
Wow.
from drug. And it's like, I don't even think about it. You know, the thoughts aren't even there at all whatsoever. So I'm very, very proud of myself and the grace that God gave me through that, and the courage that he implemented in me, to overcome that. Was I supposed to go through that? I have no idea, man. But looking back, that was quite an experience. And today I sit here as a very successful business owner. I just got approved for a large home loan just recently. And I'm like, when they said, like, you got approved for this amount, I'm like, what? And I'm sitting there like, and I just started to reflect on where I was 15, 16 years ago. And the work and the belief that not only God had in me, but what I had in myself, to live this life, and go on this journey. What a journey it is, man. And I can't wait for what's ahead.
So with all that being said, Zach, what you said reminded me in part of episode 139 of this podcast with Caleb McCoy. He talks about overcoming his addiction to some pretty hard drugs. And, you know, what stood out to me from his episode was his lowest point. And then the rebound or the transcendence up from that lowest point, and the journey that was for him. If you don't mind sharing, do you have a lowest moment or a lowest point that you could remember from that time of addiction?
Yeah, I remember sitting in jail. I was involved in a lot of crime, you know, to do everything I can to support my addiction. And I remember sitting in jail. It's funny, all these people that you run around with, you know, doing drugs, they're not the ones who come visit me in jail. It's my pastor that comes and visits me in jail that I grew up with. It's my mom and dad that come and visit me in jail, and here I am in my orange jumpsuit. And so that was a pretty low moment in my life. And obviously my mom, you know, my mom's not around anymore. She was my best friend. And God, I knew I'd get emotional. Sorry. She's looking down from heaven, very, very pleased and proud for the person I become today. So that was a very, very low moment, man. And now that you asked that, I haven't thought about this stuff in a long time. So
I appreciate you going there and digging deep and letting yourself feel these things, because, you know, I think that the depth and richness of your story is only shown with some of the low moments before we can highlight where you've come from and how you've grown. And, you know, just to go back there one more time. So you're in the orange jumpsuit, you're in prison. It's a low moment.
Well, not prison, but jail.
Or jail. I don't know the difference. I don't run in that world. So
yeah,
you're in jail, not prison. And so, you know, from there, right, was there a turning point? Was there a moment or a season or a person or a thing or a thought that helped you turn things around from there to begin with?
not necessarily. No, it's one thing being free from drug addiction, but it's a whole nother thing doing the inner work on yourself as a person. And it really, like, even though I was clean from drugs for a number of years, I really started this personal development about slowly 6 years ago. And I came across some Chad Wright podcast, who really, and Andy Frisilla. I love listening to Andy Frisilla. And it's almost like my mind was a garden at that time. And these seeds started to get planted and start to cultivate and start to grow and start a fire within me, to want to do, you know, hard things, you know? And yeah, with that being said, yeah, that was, it really, the real work didn't really start until about 5 years ago. And I've done so much work on myself since then, like nervous system regulation, like meditation. Like, it's funny. Like, I was joking with a friend, like, what do you think? Like, it's an attractive thing to ask somebody, and somebody was like, I don't know, like, what's your credit score? You know, what like, no, I think, like, how's your nervous system? You know, what kind of relationship do you have with your nervous system?
Whoa.
We'll talk about that later, but I'm so deeply involved in like nervous system regulation and neuroscience and the brain. But I don't mean to go off a tangent. You know me, man. It's my ADHD kicking in.
So we'll go there in a bit. I do want to circle back just one more time. It's one of the hard things you mentioned, and I appreciate your willingness to talk about this because I know it's heavy, but you mentioned that your mom's not with us anymore.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear about how you processed that, how you continue to process that. And yeah, I'll let you share whatever you'd like there.
I stand on the shoulders of my mom's prayers and my father's too. My mom was an incredible prayer warrior, and she saw me at my worst. And she loved me at my worst, and she prayed for me at my worst, and she never gave up, and never gave up hope. And she's looking down on me today, and I know that she's very proud of the man that I become and the life that I live and the legacy that I'm going to leave behind when I do leave this earth. So yeah, my mom was my best friend, man, and she was a role model, and I still have yet to. No one can match her charisma, her character, her integrity, and her drive, and as a woman. And yeah, so
I think that the love and reverence you have for your mom is really beautiful. And I've asked this to people in the past on the podcast, and I know this might be emotional, but if she was listening to this conversation right now, and she is, I'm sure, what would you say to her?
Oh, Joe. It's not necessarily what I would say to her, it's what I would do there. We used to go garage sales all the time. So she was physically present, like, Mom, let's go do some garage sales. Because she'd always buy these little trinkets and little things for her garden. And I remember her always being a negotiator. There would be a price on something for like $5. She's like, would you take $1? And she would always negotiate. And yeah, man, it would be really cool to like experience those things with her again, especially the maturity that I've developed now as a man. Where back then I just was nothing but egotistic and selfish and radically crazy in my life. But yeah, I know that she's watching over me though. So
yeah. Well, I will share one more thought here, and then we'll continue on with our conversation. But there's this interview, and I can't recall the two people in the interview. It might be Anderson Cooper and Stephen Colbert. I'm not sure, but the quote I'm going to paraphrase is that what punishments of God are not gifts, something along those lines. And the idea of the conversation flowed into, if you're going to be grateful for the good things in life, you have to be grateful for all of it, because to exist is a gift, and you can't pick and choose what you're grateful for. You have to be grateful for all of it. And so my question for you, Zach, is looking back at all of these things, and there are things that I'm sure you wish didn't happen, that were different, that are different, people that you wish were still here. But can you be grateful for the way that those things have shaped you to be the person you are today?
God, that ties right into like a story I wanted to share, not to get biblical, but obviously, my relationship with God, but I'm very grateful for my scars. Why am I getting emotional, man?
Because it's deep stuff, man. It is deep stuff.
If you learn to overcome your scars will tell because your scars tell a story, and they give other people hope and belief for other people who are stuck in what they're going through in their journey of life. And there's a lot of people that are hurting out there. What's crazy, I think about this story in the Bible, after Jesus was crucified, and the disciples were like locked in the room, and they were like, well, I guess it's all over, man. Jesus was a fraud, you know? And the Bible says specifically that the doors were locked, right? And Jesus just appeared out of nowhere.
Mm.
And it's funny because Thomas, who they call Doubting Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
if I was in that room, like, yo, dude, Jesus is real. He just teleported through a wall. Like, wow, dude, I believe. And Thomas was literally like, I don't believe, dude. Show me your scars.
Mm-hmm.
And because Jesus held out his hands and showed him the holes in his hands, that what made Thomas believe. And that's what a lot of people need to understand. Their scars help other people if they learn to show them authentically and be vulnerable, and to help build that bridge to give people hope that they don't have to be stuck. They don't have to be stagnant. They don't have to be a victim of their pain. Their pain creates the person that they are. And if we show people our scars more, that's what gives people hope and belief to overcome their battles and their trials and their trauma. So it's funny, yeah, you asked that. It's like, I want to share that story, man. And it ties right into that perfectly. Never be afraid of your scars, man. Never. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, Zach. And this is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because of the passion, the emotion, the wisdom, the insight, and your willingness to share your scars. Because you're right, right? When we go through hard things, I think it's easy, like we talked about earlier, to play the victim, to ask, why does this have to happen to me? Life isn't fair. Woe is me. All those things. I've been there. You've been there. I think we've all been there. However, there's also a different perspective that we can take. And, I'll speak on my struggles because this is something that I think a lot about. But, I have this genetic eye condition that causes loss of sight. I am losing my sight and I'm on this path toward blindness. And I think that gives me a really unique, special, and privileged platform to stand tall and live my life to the best of my ability, to show other people that the things that they're struggling with don't need to stop them, don't need to hold them back. And that's on the inside for me, right? Like nobody can see that unless I tell them. And just like you, your story, nobody would know that unless you shared it. And so I just want to encourage people listening to share what they're going through.
Yeah, 100%. Be authentic, be vulnerable, be real, be open. People need that. People need to hear that. I heard a quote a long time ago. I think it was from Ed Milet. You're only as qualified to help the people that used to be you.
Yeah.
And that really spoke to me. Your story is a connection to other people's stories who are still in the story that you overcame.
Yeah.
And we're called to help those people.
I agree. And I would also say that, there's this thought out there that I've had a bunch when it comes to business, when it comes to my aspirations to be a great parent someday, that I should really only be taking guidance and advice from the people who are living the life that I want to be living. If someone out there is, working a 9-to-5 job, they've never been an entrepreneur, but they're telling me how I should run my business or what risks I should or shouldn't take, I'll take that with a grain of salt because they're not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And I think similarly, there are people who your story will speak to uniquely because you have been where they are. Same with my story, same with all the stories on this podcast. And there's this phrase that I've also been thinking a lot about, which is we only dream at the size of our exposure, meaning we can only dream as big as the things we've been exposed to. And I think it's really important for people who are at the low points to know that it got better for you. It can get better for them. And there's hope and there's possibility and they could dream. And so I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you've learned and the person that you've become so that people who might be at low points or struggling with something can see that there is something to dream toward. There is something to work toward. And you're proof of that.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the things that you've learned about yourself and you've learned about your connection with your body, your feelings, your nervous system. And I'll let you share whatever it is that you feel called to share because I know there's a lot there.
Man, I like quotes too. Another quote that comes to mind: the greatest story that you can ever tell is a story that you tell yourself.
Ooh.
And who do you want to be when it comes to this gift of life that God has given you? And growing up, I had a different perspective about God, a lot different than the perspective I have today. I always thought God was an enabler. God was going to do it for you. He's just not. Because how do we grow if we don't do it ourselves? God creates the path. Yes, God graced us to live this life. But now that I look back and how God never enabled me to step into the evolution of who I am as a person today, like for instance, the journey of learning to connect with myself and my mind and my body, and learning all about nervous system regulation. God was like, I'm not going to remove your anxiety. I'm going to have you learn about what is actually happening inside of the body. And I'm just so fascinated about this work. And this is a field that, my passion, I want to step into. With I've been on antidepressants before. I've paid multiple therapists to help me. No knock on therapists, but the work that I did that therapists can help me with, the connection to the body. And I believe that without a doubt, for me personally, nervous system regulation, along with your relationship with God, is the second most important thing to have in your life, is to learning what is happening inside of your body when these chemicals of cortisol and adrenaline are being released, and they say by the time you're 35 years old, 95% of your brain is done being developed. And your brain is basically, it runs like a computer based on old behaviors and patterns of what you've experienced. And unfortunately for me, I don't like to use the word unfortunately, I always had an amygdala hijack. For those who don't know what an amygdala is, it's a small P in your brain. It's your fear responder, your emotional responder. And that thing was always out of alignment. And it's connected to the subconscious part of the brain. There's three parts of the brain: your amygdala, your subconscious, and your prefrontal cortex. And your prefrontal cortex, that's what's responsible for your rational right time, like right now thinking, your logical part of your brain. Well, my whole life, my subconscious overrid that, and which created the amygdala. They call it the amygdala hijack, which would send signals through my vagus nerve, not to get scientific, to the nervous system. And it's called the automatic nervous system. And there's two parts: the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And the sympathetic is what's activated in the flight or fright response. And when that's activated, it rushes cortisol and adrenaline in your bloodstream, which creates this anxiety. And bro, I was paralyzed by this for years. I didn't know what was going on. I just thought something was always wrong with me. I went from doctor to doctor. Why is this happening? I ruined relationship after relationship because of what I was feeling. It felt so real. And I always outsourced my love to other partners to reaffirm me, to assure me, and to validate me. Man, I'm called to validate myself now. I've learned through all that. So I've learned to biohack my nervous system by connecting with my body and building safety. And like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. You go into these sensations, in these moments with your body through meditation, and with no expectations. You have to allow everything to be what it is, with no judgment, no criticism, just pure love, and loving the parts of you that you always neglected as a teenager, as a young boy, as a young girl, as an adult, but learning to build safety and radical love. Ooh. With those parts of you. And over time, you start to see a change in the way your nervous system reacts to your emotional response in your brain. And your prefrontal cortex over time starts to become more aligned with the subconscious. And the results are just the most beautiful, hardest work I've ever done in my life, man. And I'm not perfect, but who I was like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I never imagined the person I am today because of this work with my body. So I get so emotional talking about this. But this is like my birthright to do this. And to learn about everything, what's going on inside of my body, I'm like, wow, it was like that the whole time. Just learning how to build a better relationship and learn about the nerve. God showed me all of this through books and material and stuff that I've listened to on YouTube. And I'm just so fascinated. And like, God's not going to do this for you. He'll provide the material. It's just like God didn't build the ark for Noah, Joe. He just gave him the blueprint. and Noah built the ark. And God had nothing to do with it physically. And if I can just say to anybody, God's not going to do this for you. God's going to provide the blueprint, and he's going to empower you to do this. And a lot of people miss this, man. And I almost missed it when I started praying for other things, and God showed me different things. And because of I responded to those different things, and the discomfort that I had to sit in, which I said earlier is the entryway to our healing. Sitting in that discomfort, sitting in that anxiety, sitting in that depression, and telling yourself, it is safe for me to be with this. It is safe for me to be with this. And you're building those new neural pathways, and they start to be strengthened over time. And you just keep, it's just like repetition after repetition after repetition. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you'll start to notice a subtle change. And because of the consistency and the discipline, if you keep on doing it, you'll start to create more change and more expansion and more tolerance and more capacity with the nervous system and the brain. And it's the most beautiful work. Like I said before, the hardest work I've ever done in my entire life. So I don't mean to go on a tangent, but I'm passionate about that stuff, man.
It's perfect, Zach. I didn't ask the question before you gave that answer, but right, I ask every guest, what's the hardest thing you've ever done on purpose? And this is one of the most unique answers that I think we've had out of almost 200 episodes, because what comes to mind for a lot of people, and these are all valid, is that race I did, or that business I started, or that loss that I grieved, or the relationship I ended, whatever it is. But to go so inward, so deep inward, to dig down and sit with that discomfort is so powerful. And it reminds me of two things. One, podcast episode 185. So a recent episode with Rob Escalante. Rob talked about learning as a superpower. The ability to learn is a superpower. And we talked about how I want to learn to play the piano someday. And that concept of learning means I don't have that skill right now, but with practice and repetition and patience, someday I can have that skill. That's a superpower. And you applied that to your relationship with yourself, which is such a beautiful and in some ways abstract thing that I don't think a lot of people even know where to start. And the one other, quote I'll throw out there, and then I want to ask you a follow-up question, is from Arnold Glasow, who said, the key to everything is patience. You get the chicken by hatching the egg, not by smashing it. And, right, to hatch something means you nurture it, you take care of it, you're patient with it, you're gentle with it. And I think to be those things with ourselves, to be patient and gentle, to nurture, for a lot of people is really, really hard. And so let's say someone, again, is listening and they think, wow, this sounds good, right? It makes sense between my ears, but man, like it's so foreign and I don't even know where I would start. What would you say to that person?
We talk about the egg being hatched. What happens before the egg is hatched? It's in utter darkness.
Whoa.
And just like a seed being planted in the ground, it has to experience the darkness first before it sprouts. It has to be planted deep within the ground for it to sprout. And just like an egg, it starts out in darkness, and once it's hatched into light, and darkness is pivotal to our growth as well, along with the light. They coexist with each other, like, for a reason. And so I would say, don't ever be afraid of the dark, because the darkness will create the person that you are today. Just like, a quote from Bane from Batman. Remember what he says? I was molded by the dark. I was shaped by it. I was gonna do the voice too, but it's been so many years since I've done the voice.
You want to give it a shot? I think you should give it a
shot. Darkness is my ally. I was molded by it, shaped by it.
That was 10 out of 10. That was incredible.
It's been so many years. But yeah, dude, it's like, don't be afraid of the darkness, because there's going to be seasons of light and there's going to be seasons of dark. And always be patient. And it's almost like detach from outcome. Learn to process and endure the things that you're going through, especially the darkness, because it's in the darkness that you'll able to mine the most valuable wisdom that'll set you up for your future and the next season. If you set yourself up, I swear, like, as long as you're hungry to learn, God will teach you, God will grow you. But in between the growth is the suffering. The suffering is a part of the growth. And it will always happen from season to season to season. What's next? There's so many levels to this evolution as a human being. There'll always be chapters. And I'm called to the people who are stuck at chapter 2, who are stuck at chapter 3, to help them and to guide them and to give them hope and belief and instill that they're called to the next chapter. And you know what I'm saying? So, I hope that was answering your question.
No, it was beautiful, Zach, again. And I was pulling up this quote because I've quoted this person before. Her name's Catherine May. She's the author of a book called Wintering. And the book is about how we should embrace winter. And not only the winter outside of us, but the winter inside of us, right? Because we go through seasons, and winter can be cold and dark and hard. And so I'm going to read a very, very long quote. So bear with me, but it's so good. It's from her book. So she said, "Here is another truth about wintering. You'll find wisdom in your winter.
Yeah.
And once it's over, it's your responsibility to pass it on.
Yeah.
And in return, it's our responsibility to listen to those who have wintered before us. It's an exchange of gifts in which nobody loses out.
Yeah.
This may involve the breaking of a lifelong habit, one passed down carefully through generations, that of looking at other people's misfortunes and feeling certain that they brought them upon themselves in a way that you never would. This isn't just an unkind attitude. It does us harm, because it keeps us from learning that disasters do indeed happen and how we can adapt when they do. It stops us from reaching out to those who are suffering. And when our own disaster comes, it forces us into a humiliated retreat as we try to hunt down mistakes that we never made in the first place, or wrong-headed attitudes that we never held. Either that, or we become certain that there must be someone out there we can blame. Watching winter and really listening to its messages, we learn that effect is often disproportionate to cause, that tiny mistakes can lead to huge disasters, that life is often a bloody affair, but it carries on, happening with or without our consent. We learn to look more kindly on other people's crises because they are so often portents of our own future." And so to sum that up, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's powerful. And we all go through our own winter, and we go through winters, plural, because we go through seasons of life. And we need to find the wisdom in our winter. And we also need to listen to other people who are wintering, who are going through those things, who have gone through those things, because it's an exchange where nobody loses out. And that's, again, just one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for you sharing all of this, because people are going to learn from this. People are going to be better for this. And so I thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And so with that being said, Zach, this is the Project Endure podcast. And we've talked a lot about patience. We've talked about persistence. We've talked about growing over time and nurturing things. But when you hear the word endurance or endure, what comes to mind for you? What does that mean?
In order to endure, there has to be an obstacle that's in the way for you to actually choose the action of enduring. So for me personally, when I think about that word, it's a powerful word. But I think another word that comes is resilience. You know, not just when your event that you had, beautiful event. Like I told you, it was like a church service. I wish church was like this, man. It was awesome. Just people like getting together, being vulnerable. But in this life, it requires so much endurance from that it has for you. And when I think about a story, I don't mean to go to the Bible. I think about, I've shared this story with you, the story of Elijah, one of the most powerful prophets in the Bible. And he had just got done performing the greatest miracle, like literally in the Bible, where fire came from heaven. And it was in the next chapter that he was overwhelmed with fear. And God appeared to him and was pretty much like, "What are you doing?" And the Bible said specifically he was at a tree called the broom tree. And God never stopped Elijah from going to the broom tree because he went there to kill himself. He was suicidal because of the fear that paralyzed him. And God was like, what are you doing? It's almost like he didn't want to hear his excuses.
Hmm.
But he said one word: go, go, go. Like, in other words, endure. And whoever's listening to this message, like, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, whatever pain that you're harboring right now, you were never meant to have real estate within it. You were meant to endure it. And your pain will, your fears will create the person that you are today. And without the action of enduring, we wouldn't be the people that we are today. So that's the way I think of it. Hopefully that was an answer.
It was more than I could have asked for. And I have two things I would love for you to expand on. One is about not finding real estate in it. I think that's a very interesting phrase, and I would love for you to explain more by what you mean by that. And then I'll ask the second question after.
Well, we're obviously meant to experience it, but sometimes our seasons of pain, we're still in it, past it. It's expiration. You were meant to go. You were meant to be resilient. You're meant to endure those moments. And like we said, in those moments of darkness is the most powerful wisdom that we can mine. Literally, it's more precious than gold or silver when it comes to these experiences. But you're never meant to stay there. You were meant to go. You were meant to endure. Was that the answer to your question?
That was exactly what I was asking. And, the second question, this is something that you told me on one of our coaching calls a couple weeks ago. And it really, I don't know if I expressed this to you in the moment, but it was so encouraging to me. And you had said that the event was like church, right? The Project Endure event was kind of like church. And I would love for you to expand on that just a little bit and tell me again and the people listening what you meant by that.
Man, the I've been to a lot of events and a lot of amazing events, but the energy and the culture and the DNA of what I felt there was just like truly, truly amazing. You felt God, you felt unity, you felt the spirit, you felt the camaraderie, you felt the excitement, and it's crazy how, I think you showed a picture of, when did you start Project Endure?
It was 2021, so 4 years ago to this month.
Yeah, and what was there, just a handful of people at the first one, and
Uh-huh.
to see how that seed has grown and that vision that God has placed in your heart, and how he gave you the responsibility to be obedient to this vision and cultivate that, and to see where it not only is that today, but to where it's going. And the lives that you impacted and that you've affected. And, it's like, it's crazy how when we truly walk in our purpose, it's like that scripture, Ephesians 3:20, God will do everything that we never ask or imagine. As long as we just listen and follow him, we're in this life of like, bro, I did not know this was going to happen. This is crazy. This is so much bigger than I thought it would be. So yeah, that it was just like the events, like the vulnerability, the questions, the physical fitness, it was truly, truly amazing. And Philadelphia, and the culture and the spirit there and the history, I've never been there. To see the American Revolutionary War Museum, I'm fascinated about history, and to see the Liberty Bell, and the food was amazing. And yeah, I had a really, really good time. And to see you finally in person, Joe.
I know that was special for me, Zach. And I'm really glad you enjoyed the city and the event. And, that experience is special for me each year. And one of the things that is so special is to be able to look over and see someone like you having a conversation with someone else that I know. And maybe that other person is, a client, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's just someone who showed up and wants to learn more about what's going on. To know that they're in such good hands having a conversation with a human being like yourself means the world to me. And that's really the goal of Project Endure, is to bring more people together like you, because it's about shared vulnerability. It's about supporting one another and also accepting support. It's about doing hard things and growing together. Yeah. And I just feel so grateful that, you were there, and that I get to have a lot of people like you in one space once a year.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait for next year, man, for sure.
It's going to be fun. So
we went in Seattle.
You know what? It's funny. I've had people from different cities say, do one here, do one there. And it's definitely not out of the question. I will say this though, putting on that event each year is like 6 months of focus and
Yeah.
hard work and exhaustion. And so as we scale, it's not out of the question. And with that being said, what I will
Okay, can I add one thing to that
yeah.
comes to my mind? I loved how before everything started, you brought your wife up and you honored her. I thought that was special. That like I got emotional about that and how I just thought that was truly, truly amazing and how much respect and honor that you showed her in that moment before the event even started and how you couldn't have done this without her. I thought that was like that's a good guy right there. That's a good man right there. So yeah.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you appreciate that. And it's just the truth. Like I work really hard. There's a lot that goes into this, but I wouldn't be who I am and I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do without her. And I also have to have some fun with it. So as you saw, she got shot with the confetti cannons, and each year I'm going to have to figure out how to do that without her knowing, because last year I shot the cannon. This year I had two people hop in and shoot the cannons. Next year I'm going to have to come up with something completely different.
Yeah.
So we'll figure that out.
I love it.
So for now, Zach, really what I would love us to transition to, and as we wrap up this conversation, this might be my favorite question. And it is completely okay if we are redundant here and you circle back to things you've said already. But there are people listening to this all over the world who are just having a hard time. They're going through a tough season. They're in the darkness. They're buried and they're waiting to feel like they've been planted. And you get to speak to that person right now who's just having a tough time. What would you say to them to guide them and encourage them and push them?
I think it starts with belief, and I heard this quote recently: what you believe and think about yourself will determine where you will go in life. And it starts with believing who you are. Yep. And believing that you can endure. Because dude, life is hard. Life is really, really hard, but it does us no good if we just stay at those earlier levels. So I would say belief, and like I said earlier, the greatest story that you can tell is the story that you tell yourself. Learn to change the narrative of what you believe about yourself, and the future is bright as long as you're okay with the suffering that comes along with it. And I would say belief, man, belief.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, and this is not something that I told you I was going to say, and hopefully you feel flattered by this because it's a compliment. You are, I think you said when you were here in Philadelphia, someone called you a specimen. You are a specimen. Yeah. You're big, you're strong, you're tall, you've got the tattoos, right? I think if people don't know you, you might even look intimidating, right? But on the inside, you've got such a big, soft heart. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And it's such maybe a rare combination. I don't think people would peg you as that, maybe just from a first glance. You've got the beard, the tattoos, you're tall, you're big. But it's so beautiful to watch someone like you have a conversation like this, not be afraid to get emotional, not be afraid to dig deep. It just is so encouraging for me, because I think there are times when I walk through life or people walk through life and we feel like we need to be hard. We feel like we need to harden to protect ourselves from how challenging life can be. And I don't think that's the path forward. I don't think hardening ourselves is the answer. I think being soft and surrendering and being gentle is the answer. And from a physical standpoint, it's cool to see you be soft and gentle and surrender, because physically you are so strong.
Yeah. There's another quote that comes to mind, and you might have heard this, but it's better to be a warrior in the garden than the gardener in the war. I love that.
Zach, I think this is the first podcast episode in the history of these recordings where the guest has outquoted me in an episode. you have won that award, and so congratulations.
What do I get? Do I get a trophy or what?
I think I don't know. I'm gonna have to think of something.
Oh man.
But seriously, Zach, this conversation has been so encouraging for me. I have no doubt that it's been encouraging for the people listening. And if someone is listening and what you said resonated and they want to reach out, they want to hear more about your story, they want to ask you a question, or they just want to say thank you, where's the best place for people to do that?
Instagram, or do people give their phone numbers out here? I don't know.
I wouldn't. Instagram's good. I'll link
My email.
Yeah. What's your email?
Send me a raven with a message, just like the medieval times. I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. Yeah, but you can hit me on my Instagram, Z Hamilton, 1981. So Z as in zebra, HAMILTON, 1981. The year I was born. I'm old, man. I'm here to help. Truly, 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 this is a passion for me and a purpose that I love walking in, and teaching people about nervous system regulation and learning how to connect with their bodies. I believe it is our birthright, because how can you conquer anything out here if you don't learn how to conquer what's inside of here? So I truly believe that's the way to live life, man, for me personally. And I would love to chat with anybody that needs assistance and guidance and help. And bro, I'm here for you no matter what.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.